Good morning. Last summer, Unilever campaigns won 44 awards at the 60th Annual Cannes Lions International Festival of Creativity, the world's biggest annual event for the creative communications industry. That was twice the number won by the second most successful advertiser at the festival. Now I'm going to let you in on a little secret behind that success. 2 words, magic and logic. That is Keith Weed's recipe as he shapes how a 21st century marketing organization can and should operate. Keith is one of the world's primary architects of a new model for establishing enduring connections, one in which brands strive not just to sell products, but to make a difference and affect change in the lives of their consumers. It's no coincidence that he's responsible for both marketing and sustainability. The man who told Ad Age that his job was to get to the future first has much to share. And today, we have him here with us. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend, Keith Weed.
Hello, Michael.
Thank you.
Hi.
So, Keith, first of all, thank you for making the trip. I know you got in from London and got in late last night, so I appreciate you being here and joining us today. Keith, this is your, I think, third consumer electronics show. So as we say, it's not your first rodeo. What has attracted you to the consumer electronics show per se? And Unilever took a lead position. You were the first global marketer that I can remember who blended together the chief information officer to work alongside you and your marketing organization. And how's that worked out? So 2 questions. Why CES and the mashup of the CIO and the CMO?
Well, firstly, hi everyone, and a very warm welcome to a first morning of a few exciting days. And why are we here? At the end of the day, we sell soap and soup, Ben and Jerry's through the Hellmann's, Dove, etc. And we're mass marketeers. 2 billion people a day use our products. But if you take yourself back to the days of radio and TV arriving, the branded manufacturers who didn't jump into TV and as I say, get to the future first, were left behind. And so quite simply, I want to fish where the fish are. If the people that we serve with our products are using more gadgets in different ways, etc., I want to understand why they're using them. I want to understand how we can use the very sort of coattails of this fantastic revolution that's going on to engage with people in different ways. So the reason why I'm here, quite simply, is to get a feel and a touch of what's going on and how that's going to affect the way all of us live our lives. I have to say also, very pragmatically, I will also be doing sort of top-to-tops with all the global digital companies, the Microsofts, the Googles, the Twitters, the Facebooks, the Amazons of the world, because everybody's here. I also run Unilever Marketing Ventures, so I'll be meeting with startups. We've recently invested in Percolate, for example. We're invested in Brandtone, things like that. So that's another opportunity. And then last but not least, we'll run our digital advisory board here because, again, people are coming here. So I think there were 2 things. One is walking the floor and seeing the stuff, but also just taking the opportunity that everyone's here.
So, Keith, I know you haven't done a full floor walk yet because it's too early, but I heard you kind of cheated a little this morning and took a walk on the floor when you were doing a CNBC interview. Did you see anything that caught your eye?
Well, first of all, it's amazing to see the place empty. Well, my memory of the last few years is, of course, there's a rugby scrum of people. But it was empty this morning at 7:30. I suppose, actually, I should respond as a person, as a guy, rather than as a CMO. I love the curved TVs of Samsung. I mean, they look fabulous. I was taking photographs and sending them to my kids. It's not often you get your 18-year-old daughter sending back to saying, that is crazy, that's insane. I'd never get a response to that from my daughter. So then clearly I must be slightly cool, only slightly.
Keith, you really, 3.5, now almost 4 years ago, championed something that I think changed the industry, and that was digital literacy. Not that people hadn't visited the Silicon Valley before, but the first Unilever trip that we were fortunate enough to work together on was nearly 4 years ago. Yeah. And it changed it up for the Valley. It changed it up for marketers. Not only in terms of the fact that you made the trip and brought, I don't remember, but 30 of your global executives and brand side as well as media, but it changed the focus. You met with not only the startups, but you met with the existing companies, but then as well the VCs. Unilever's taken a real leadership position there. How has that influenced the marketing decisions that you're making?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite striking to think it's happened also so recently. As you say, it was 4 years ago. And at one stage we were debating whether we should have a session with Twitter or not, whether they were interesting enough to meet for a period. It was only 4 years ago. I mean, we were going to meet with them, but how big a session we gave.
It's actually, just to remind you, Twitter in May of 2010 wasn't big enough to justify their own meeting. They came to a speed dating dinner with us.
We had a speed dating dinner.
They were a speed dater.
Yeah.
They'd be buying dinner now, but they were a speed dater back then.
So by the way, people coming in here, this is proof about how bad the traffic is. This is my team. They're the only people...
They're the only people that have to be here.
They're the only people who are paid to be here. The rest of you are here voluntary. Welcome, team. So anyway, to come back, it was 4 years ago, and that stage, what struck me was we were in this terrible situation where we had a lost generation. The very people that we are wanting to lead our company in this bright new world were the very people who didn't have any sort of feel and touch. Now, all of you here, by definition, have dragged yourself into this. Whereas I look at the greying hairs and balding heads, I'm talking about the guys here, around the audience, you this stuff. You learnt it as I have. And so one of the things we want to do with the senior people was to give them a major sort of sheep dip into the tech world. And I can remember at the time what we did is we gave all iPads. iPads had just come out. Unilever was a completely non-Apple company. It was impossible to buy anything Apple. So I got Mark McLennan, my chief information guy, to buy them all on his expenses. As I was told afterwards, people can get fired for doing that. iPads, we had them all sorted out and raring to go. So I think one of the things was just actually immersing people in the whole world as we did. I'm conscious this mic is interfering a lot. Did someone give me a handheld, or I can shift off this mic otherwise? I'm going to irritate all of you. Just noise, not what I'm saying. And it's not my accent you're hearing, it is genuine interference.
I think we're trying to get one now.
Okay, but let's carry on. So what did we basically do? We met with everyone then back in Silicon Valley, as so many, as you say, have done since. I think the biggest impact it's done is doing it at scale. So we have 7,000 marketeers. Great, thank you. Is it on? I'll wait till you turn it on. Okay. We have 7,000 marketeers in Unilever. So one thing is to get the few people, and we've got here another 20 or so, but then taking it back to the 7,000 is the big challenge, because we want everyone to be able to operate on scale. I want to be able to not just have a few interesting bits of digital that I can show in presentations and talk to you about right now, but things that can happen at scale. An example of that would be the Dove makeover. You talk about magic and logic. Here's a bit of magic where we used with Facebook the ability to outbid for ads. So rather than having negative ads sent to ladies around losing weight or increasing bust size or whatever, your friend could buy and send instead, courtesy of Dove, a positive message rather than some of this negative niggling advertising. And we could have just done a little experiment on that. In fact, we did it at scale, and in the first week had 250 million impressions. So that would be a bit of magic for those who saw Dove Makeover. Or then a bit of logic would be Dove Sketches, which hopefully many of you have seen. Now 200 million people plus have seen. But this used a police artist.
Extraordinary campaign.
Yeah, this is the one that actually pushed a lot of those golds at Cannes. Police artist basically sketching a woman describing herself and then sketching her friend describing her and seeing the differences. And that truly went around the world. But the logic part is we had a control room, watching blogs, feeding, seeing the social media, obviously running different PR campaigns, translating into 25 different languages, and it's run in over 100 countries. And that's the scale of digital.
So Keith, when you talk about the scale, and you certainly have it, and I think the number is 2 billion people a day touch a Unilever product somewhere in the world. It's an astounding number. You also have balanced, and I mentioned this at the beginning, sustainability. And it's core to your beliefs and core to your personal beliefs. And as I said, you maintain that responsibility within Unilever whilst, selling soap and soup, as you said. How are you managing that? How are you managing the reduction of the carbon footprint and all the things that I know, I don't say all the things so lightly, that are so near and dear to you? And when we first met, water was something you were still very committed to you know, in terms of when you took on the global chief marketing job?
Yeah. So, I mean, whatever company you're in, I think you need to have a point of view of the future, a point of view of the future that impacts, you know, the people you serve and the sort of company you are. And from our perspective, you know, we're the largest tea company in the world, we're the largest ice cream company in the world, we're the largest soap company in the world, the largest deodorant company in the world. We need to have a point of view about the people that we serve around the world in over 190 countries, and what sort of thing is going to impact them. So on a broad scale, clearly the digital revolution and everything to do with that. And you already buy into that one because you're already here, so I'm preaching to the choir. Another one is the world moving east and south. And that has a huge impact on our business. We have got vast businesses in India and China and Brazil, etc. So that's another thing. The third big thing is the whole environment. You know, we're heading towards, depending who you believe, 9, 10, 11 billion people on the planet. We need to make as much food in the next 40 years as we've made in the last 8,000 to feed all of you and your friends and family. The challenge is massive.
I'm going on a diet based on that.
The challenge is massive. So unless companies like ours become the solution rather than the problem, we're not going to be around in another 100 years. We've been around since the late 1880s. And the whole sustainability was very much at the core of our company at the beginning, and is very much so now. But I think now with steroids, we've really accelerated. We want to double our business. We want to serve those few billion people who are yet to arrive on the planet. But we want to halve our environmental impact and increase our social impact. So that's stated right at the top of the mission of our company. And to do that, you have to do quite a lot of big things to change the way you do marketing. And increasingly, people are getting interested. But the truth of the matter is, it's not yet a mass concern, but it will be a mass concern. You've seen some of these weather changes that are going on right now, and people say, why is it happening? Well, just look at climate change. You have a lot of the answers there. It's going to impact crops. It's going to impact things already running out in this planet right now. We don't shout a lot about it, but in the next few years, metals are going to start running out, copper, etc., and we won't have them anymore. And we've got to start thinking about disconnecting growth from the environmental impact, and we want to be part of that solution. So we have a big team doing that, but all our brands have some sort of environmental and social positioning within them.
Keith, one of my favorite quotes from Jeff Bezos is something to the effect of, you don't build a company on what changes, you build a company on what stays the same. What's changing, what's staying the same? I mean, we're in an accelerating world, and we're here today talking about technology as a muse. How is technology fueling that change? And you've been a marketer for your career. What are the decisions that you're making today that are similar to the ones you made before, and how many of them are different?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is things are changing quicker. I know every generation says that, but I think what's happened is the combination of globalization and the whole digitization is accelerating. The more global you are, the more digital you can become. The more digital you are, the more global you can become. And I think there's genuinely an accelerator. So it's not just our generation looking back to the generation before and saying it's getting faster. It is genuinely getting faster. And of course, we've got lots of equipment to help us live in that faster changing world. I think one of the things that remain constant, and the reason why I think it's an exciting time to be in business, in marketing, in brands, is the role of brands. Your brands have been great organizers. I would challenge any of you to go into a supermarket with 100,000, 150,000 items and do a shop in less than a day if you didn't have brands. If you had to go around, as people did 100 years ago, and prod this and smell that and squeeze that before you bought it, you would be in there a whole day doing.
Well, you're in Las Vegas. That happens a lot. I couldn't resist that, guys. I'm sorry.
Moving swiftly.
It's low-hanging fruit.
Moving swiftly on. And what brands do is simplify. So you go in and people spend about 10 seconds in the laundry aisle. Things are simplified because you know what you want. You go and grab and you get on with it. And I think in this ever complex world, you have brands in your mind right now that you can think of a part of your life because they simplify your life. They stand for something. I think in a fragmenting media world that we're seeing, of course, it's really exciting. There's so many things you can do in the digital world, but that's exactly the problem. It's this chaos. You're bombarded with messages from the left and from the right. And what you've all managed to do so brilliantly is learn how to filter out. You've already seen thousands of messages since you've landed in Vegas, and you haven't actually registered most. Most of you have evolved to hold the world out because the world is so noisy. And my job, and lots of other brand manufacturers and advertisers, is to actually break through that, And the way we do it is by engaging with you in a way that you want to be engaged with about something that's interesting. So I think the big constant, and the thing that will grow more and more, is the power of brands to simplify a world which is getting more and more chaotic by the day.
Well, Keith, I want to thank you for taking the time, and I think that last point is so critical because as we talk about the social sphere and the ability for you as a brand to communicate directly with your consumers, something you could never do before, you, particularly Unilever, have taken advantage of that. So I thank you for that, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Great, well, thank you. And I'd also like to, before we finish, I'd like to thank Michael, because Michael was there at the very beginning on our Silicon Valley trip. And I think we've learned quite a lot together over the last few years.
Absolutely.
And it shows that old dogs can learn new tricks.
Well, as you know, when we launched MediaLink, Unilever was our first partner, so that means a lot.
Okay, I'll get off before we do a love-in together.
Thank you, Keith. To further explore the concept of technology as a muse, I'd like to welcome my partner, President and Chief Operating Officer of MediaLink, Wenda Millard.
So, thank you. Wow. Always, always inspiring, Keith. Thank you so much for being with us. So I'm going to have my panelists, all 7 of them. We're going to be speed dating this morning, speed talking. Why don't you all start coming up as I introduce you. For those of you who saw Spike Jonze's new movie, Her, Joaquin Phoenix's character, Theodora, literally falls in love with his computer's operating system. So what does it mean to have a muse that is technology? If that technology is a device, it could mean that you can't get through your day or do your job without it. If it is a system, it could inspire you to think about the inherent possibilities for you, your life, and your work. So our panelists this morning are uniquely suited to tackle this compelling and rather esoteric idea. So I'm not sure what order we're in versus my cards, but why don't you give a little wave when I introduce you. So Tim Castelli is President of National Sales and Marketing and Partnerships at Clear Channel Media and Entertainment, where he works across broadcast, digital, mobile, social, and event platforms. Janine Gibson, I think we can probably identify you without that hand wave. But Janine is editor-in-chief of The Guardian US, The Guardian's New York-based newsroom, where she leads a staff of reporters and editors who cover American news for an online global audience of nearly 25 million monthly readers. And their US site has won numerous awards already, including making Adweek's hot list for this year's hottest news site. Ben Learer is co-founder and CEO of Thrillist Media Group. Ben helped Thrillist transform from a niche email newsletter company to a disruptive media company, paving the way in content and e-commerce. And Ben recently earned a spot on the list of the most powerful CEOs under 40, according to Forbes. But don't feel any pressure.
No pressure.
There you go. And Eddie Moretti is Chief Creative Officer of Vice Media Worldwide, and he's responsible for content across all of Vice's media channels. In addition to being CCO, Eddie is also a writer, director, and producer. Fred Santarpia is Executive Vice President and Chief Digital Officer of Condé Nast Entertainment, which develops filmed entertainment based on Condé Nast's world-renowned brands, articles, and personalities. Prior to being with CNE, Fred was general manager and part of the founding executive team at Vivo. And then, of course, there's Shingy, David Shing. David is AOL's digital prophet, and he spends the majority of his days and nights watching the future take shape and helping to interpret the implications and potential applications for global marketers. Freddie Wong, we have a Fred and a Freddie. So Freddie Wong, you probably recognize him. He's co-founder and partner of Rocket Jump Studios, and he crafts unique mind-bending viral videos on his YouTube channel, which has earned him the #1 spot on the most subscribed video director on YouTube with over 900 million views. So I think we must absolutely start with Janine this morning, because you broke the biggest news story of the year, one so gripping that it will no doubt become a Hollywood movie. So Janine, tell us a little bit about the NSA story and about the technology that has become your muse.
Thank you. I picked the Tor browser bundle to talk about because it was technology that we hadn't really used, although we were aware of it. And as we started to write and break and spend 7 months on a story that is only really about technology, how you cover it becomes as much of a technological challenge as understanding the story itself. So the NSA story, just in case you missed it.
Where were you?
Began in June when, for us, or in the late days of May, when we heard that Edward Snowden had leaked this enormous trove of documents. We still actually don't know how many documents. And Glenn Greenwald phoned me up from Rio and said, I have this extraordinary leak. It's the biggest intelligence leak in a generation. If it's true, it's the most extraordinary thing. And your first question is, how are we speaking? Because The Guardian, and I hate to be the second British person sitting in front of you and talk about how old we are, but we're a 200-year-old news organisation. We have a long storied history of breaking stories, but 3 years ago we broke the WikiLeaks story, which of course was another mega leak, the first mega leak. And the first thing that we started to learn when we were covering that story was the insecurity of communications. If you're having hourly, daily conversations with Julian Assange, you better have a secure way of doing it. So when he said to me, oh, I'm on a Skype phone, I thought, no. So almost the first decision that you make in this story is to put somebody on an airplane and get them to the office. And basically that has been the constant challenge. This is a story that has been reported from all five continents at one stage or another. We've had journalists in many different countries. We've had to move incredibly sensitive material around the world, have conversations, and edit stories and through secure methods. And the one thing you learn in this situation is the more secure the method, the less user-friendly it is. So to return to Tor, it's a brilliantly secure method. And having now reported a story, one of the stories that we did was about the security of the Tor browser, which is funded by the State Department to be a secure tool for activists and dissidents around the world. And of course, the NSA has then spent several years trying to attack it and to break the encryption. So, but it's held up pretty well, which was a relief because we've been using it for the previous 3 months. But but it's still really hard to use. So one of the biggest challenges for my industry and for the tech industry as a whole is this sort of arms race of encryption, where we need more and more better encryption.
Tim, I have to move to you after that because you, in our previous conversation, you don't seem to be worried in the slightest about making your phone, your everything, your muse. You're not worried about all this?
I'm not talking to the NSA.
Well, you don't
no
think
leaks.
you are.
Well, I probably am, actually.
Yeah. You are now.
My Muse has been and will continue to be, I think, my mobile device. You know, it ends up running my professional life, running my personal life. Ways to keep me informed and educated and entertained. I listen to my music on it, my radio stations on it, my television shows. Watch my kids with it. They continually inspire me on how they use the mobile devices. And I find it is allowed, for me at least, a way of. I've given up a long time ago on the work-life balance thing, and the mobile device has created a work-life integration that has made it possible for all of us. And if I have to give up a little bit of maybe privacy or information to make it more relevant, and the information I get, then it gets curated for me, then that's I'm okay with that.
You're okay with that.
Okay with that.
You look like a pretty trustworthy guy, so we're probably okay with that too. Hey, Shingy, you have several muses. Kind of, you're like an artist with a lot of lovers. But as we were talking about devices, talk about your pretty young things. What is the pair?
Yeah, so unlike Tim, I think the challenge of the phone is there's this phenomenon called pizzled. You guys are probably aware of it. You're having a conversation with somebody, suddenly they pull out their phone mid-conversation, they do this. You're like, well, you get a mix of pissed off and puzzled, so it's called pizzled. And it's like, sorry, I thought we were having a moment. You pull out your bloody phone and you're off. So it shows that you absolutely want to be disrupted. So what I love about wearables is the ability to say, look, there are other sensors that can be monitored without having to pull out my phone and be a dick. And what's interesting about it is this technology that I like is called PAIR. It's new. The challenge with most of the sensors and the wearable tech today, it's insulated. It's all about me. And it gets really, really boring, to be fair. And for example, if I quantify myself, that's great for me, but who wants to socialize the fact of 2,000 steps? It's bullshit. But it's important, those 2,000 steps are important to somebody else, like my yoga teacher or my instructor. So where I think this is going to go and where I think it's really intriguing is the ability for platforms to open up and become models for people other than the brand itself. So PAIR is basically an open API. It's a dongle. It's butt ugly. So I'm never bloody going to show this thing around. But it's this thing that you strap to your heart. It monitors all the stuff that the wrist technologies can't do, or the eye technologies, because currently we have one face, two wrists. That's the world we're in, seemingly. So this shit straps to your chest, and it actually monitors everything. And that data then can be accessed by other people who can do something with it. So it's an open platform that I think is really exciting. And it's not another screen that you face, and it doesn't give you that situation of being pissed off.
Wow, good promotional opportunity, I think, for Valentine's Day, really, that heart monitoring there. But I want to stick with something that you just said about sort of moving to, sort of from devices to systems. And if you look at the CES floor, you know, we're inundated with screens of all shapes and sizes, but you don't seem to see these discreetly, all the different shapes, sizes, et cetera. Can you just chat about that for a minute?
No, I think they're all about the when, where, and what, and how, and why. So it's all about the emotional sense, and I think that's the ubiquity. So it's quite bizarre when I see all of these brands go down to the floor and look at the curved TVs and say, holy shit, man, that's amazing. How can I put my brand on it? Well, the revolution is called video, so enjoy it. But I think it's incredible to say that what it does is just about immersion. So I don't care about the size or the factor, or, you know, I care about the underpinnings of it, actually. I think the most exciting thing here, and should be the most exciting thing here, is going to be sound. Because vision is taken care of, and I think sound becomes another part of the immersion, which is beyond the screen, is that beautiful dimension of sound is something that we forget about. You look at your screen on your phone, it's absolutely delicious video. You pull out your headphones, it sounds like a 1982 radio. Rubbish. So wait till sound and that vision of that small device, that's when things become hot. And the bigger it gets, better the sound. Amazing.
Oh, good. So Ben, you recognize the allure of shopping via the screen, so I think it's probably fair to say that e-commerce is your muse?
Well, I think for me, you know, e-commerce really represents a new kind of access to data. So we had built a media company where I think, like most media companies, we had a relationship where we created content and we hoped that people liked that content, and we sold advertising, and we had a very traditional media business, albeit, you know, exclusively digital. And over the last few years, as we brought commerce more and more into the mix and started to actually sell products to our guys, we've had sort of an amazing awakening where we've realized that there's so much more information that we can glean through actually understanding what people are buying and getting real first-party data through commerce, that we've now actually changed our whole strategy around what kind of content we create, how we sort of evaluate good content, and how we evaluate engagement, and ultimately have a different understanding of what lifetime value looks like, and I think create much better products, even on the media side, because of what we've learned through commerce. And so, you know, e-commerce, but really truly looking at data and listening to data, and not letting us just sort of, you know, opinions that people have are fine, but if you can't really back it up with something that you can hold and that you can look at and that's factual, it just doesn't carry all that much weight within the organization now.
Accountability word again.
Yep.
So when we asked Eddie Moretti about his technology muse, he told us it was his espresso maker. So we did some research on Amazon, and Eddie, your espresso maker costs about $7,000. So maybe Marzocco should take a booth at CES, but you want to explain to us why your espresso maker is your muse?
So I drink a lot of coffee, and I actually did a little bit of the math to figure out if that was a smart investment. And if I live another 40 years and drink, 3 espressos a day, it works out to be cheaper than buying it at Starbucks. And so I love this thing. 7,000 over 40 years. Have you seen the prices out there? It's an incredible machine. It's handmade in Italy. It's beautiful to look at. It is, but it has become a symbol. It wasn't a cheeky answer to your question. It's become a symbol. In the morning, I used to take this and look at this right in bed. And I've stopped doing that, and I force myself to go to my little Cafe Moretti, I call it, and I make a coffee in the morning. And what it does, I think, for me is, ironically, because it's espresso, it speeds me up, but it slows me down enough to think of the day in a different way, and sort of detach myself from technology. Vice was built because technology became cheap and democratic enough to, we made a magazine when desktop publishing was invented. We started making online videos in 2005 when broadband was good enough, when cameras were cheap enough, and when editing systems were readily available for a laptop. So we love technology, and I think we should be a little bit terrified of it. The coffee in the morning is a symbol. It helps me detach from this thing. I think of the media day I'm about to embark on in a different way. And frankly, like all the technology on the floor that you're talking about, David, I think it will all eventually become wrapped up in one of your stories in some way. And I think that's, it's exciting. I love technology, a little bit like Spike Jones. I love the possibilities, but I think we should have an espresso and like a cigarette if you want, and have a discussion about it at the beginning of the day.
Yeah, that's cigarettes, though. We're going to reduce that 40 years to about 37 if you keep doing that.
Yeah.
So Fred, your tech muse actually changed your relationship to technology. Can you talk a little bit about how that happened, what you meant by that?
Well, so at Condé Nast Entertainment, we create a lot of video. We're putting out anywhere between 20 to 50 different videos per week, thousands of videos per year, and we're doing it for some of the world's most iconic brands, Vogue, GQ, Vanity Fair. So when Wenda asked this question, I was thinking about what my inspiration was, what my challenge is to create better video content for these brands that are just so iconic. And for me, the muse that I thought of was just the increase in speed and reliability in internet for mobile devices. And what that means for me is, it's not just about the stories that we choose to tell, the programming that we choose to create for these brands, but it's about the endless possibilities on how, when, and where our consumers are going to choose to view that content. So, the great pleasure and challenge in the digital video space today is to not only consider the storytelling, but to also consider the environment and the behavioral context around the story that you're choosing to tell. And to me, that changes everything. And I think we've added an entirely new dimension to thinking about, content consumption. So for us going into 2014, our challenge is to try and figure out how to crack that code. And I think that's going to be an exciting journey for us.
And Condé Nast is over 100 years old.
We are
Right.
a 100-year-old company who, at its core, is we are storytellers.
Fantastic. So kind of staying with that topic of content creation, but on the other end of it, Freddie, you create live action and animated videos that get tens of millions of YouTube views. How did you get started, and who do you consider, or what do you consider your technology muse?
Well, we got started by just looking at how people were beginning to watch videos, and I noticed things like my cousins, just like they weren't going to movies anymore, they weren't watching TV. I know that, and then I noticed I haven't seen a television ad that wasn't like next to a sports program in I think 3 years. I just don't watch TV anymore, and it's like, where is everybody going? Because it's not like we're all of a sudden everybody's taking on hobbies like knitting and stuff. It's like, no, they're teenagers and stuff that the audience that we speak to, they're on their phones, and they're watching videos, they're watching content, but they're not doing it in the ways that we're used to. And in seeing that, we saw that like YouTube and online video was the way to go. And I'm a film major, I'm film production guy, and in school everybody was like, all right, you gotta make a short film, you gotta get to the festivals, you gotta get on the big screen, and even to this day I still get questions like, so guys, yeah, well, you guys are doing like online video, but like when you gonna like make a movie and put it in theaters and stuff? I'm like, well, why would I want to? It's like a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it. Like, does it make a sound? If a movie comes out and like none of my audience like watches movies anymore in theaters, like why do I want to go where people aren't seeing these things anymore? And as a filmmaker, I think we're in this really weird, interesting spot technologically right now where distribution, means of distribution, ways of getting your content out there is in our hands. Like historically, for the last 100 years of film, that hasn't been the case. You've had to go to a studio with your hands on like, please give me money to make a film, and hopefully we can get the distribution for it, hopefully we can get it on TV, or hopefully we can get something in theaters. But now it's like, no, we don't have to bother with that. So technology is kind of integral to everything that we do because it's enabled, it's that confluence of everything from online video and the fact that internet's fast enough to stream video, and the fact that cameras are good enough so that the average consumer can look at something that you shoot with even like your iPhone camera, and it's like, that looks good, that looks, it's at a level of quality that works cinematically. And then we have all this stuff, like CES is full of it, and like there's trade shows every, just all throughout the year here in Vegas, with just like camera technology and here's the new stabilizers, 4K, 8K, and we gotta shoot in, we had more dynamic range and like cameras and all this stuff, and it just goes on and on and on and on. But like to what end do we have all this technology for? And in the end, it's just cavemen and shadow puppets. It's just narrative, it's just telling stories. It's no different than what we as human beings have been doing since the moment we figured out how to talk to each other and communicate things. And so like it's all these things have allowed us to basically get back to the very basic thing, which is communication, which is storytelling, which is narrative. And that's what we do, and that's what we're focused on. We're focused on as you said earlier, it's like everything changes, what stays the same, and what we realize is like what really stays the same is that good, compelling narrative is the most powerful thing out there.
You find the technology liberating, but there are others who find the technology restrictive in many ways from a storytelling standpoint. Fred, Shingy, maybe, do you feel that it's more liberating when we're talking about storytelling, or is it restrictive?
Well, I think for us, I just look at our entire division, right? Condé Nast Entertainment didn't exist 2 years ago. And Condé Nast was a company that told its stories entirely through the medium of print. And now through technology, we've got an opportunity to reach an entirely new audience in a much different way through video. So without technology, that certainly wouldn't be the case. We're reaching a completely different audience from the audience that reads the book. That audience is there as well, but we're able to go broader and introduce these brands that are household names to a younger generation who hasn't experienced them yet, may not be likely to pick up a magazine. So I think technology in that way has been very, very freeing for us as a company.
Janine, a comment on that maybe for,
right,
from your standpoint?
It was just said before, but digital allows you to be global, and The Guardian, despite its great age, was not even close to being the biggest newspaper in the UK. A tiny print newspaper with a very devoted following, a storied history, but we are now the third biggest newspaper website in the world. We have 85 million global users, 25 here in the US. We were able to come here 2.5 years ago, build a US website, and then report the biggest story in the world. How on earth we got there from where we started, which was a small industrial town in the north of England. Yes, things happen fast. Things have changed faster, and technology has. So we wouldn't be here without the digitization and globalization.
Eddie, I think you work across so many different channels. Do you ever find technology restrictive in your storytelling?
I think, to your point, the greatest technology is the narrative, and if the storytelling is, great, it's going to cut through and technology will just help, amplify that. I think the problem is, and most storytelling technologies are pretty basic. Video is not a new invention. The distribution of broadband video is fairly new, but the underlying, tenets of a story told through video is maybe the same as, the silent era. Well, that's a wrong analogy because they had no sound. So, golden age of Hollywood, or whatever. I think where I start to see problems, and I don't know that restrictive is the right word, but a lot of new storytelling paradigms where a story begins in video and crosses into another medium and goes from this device to your laptop to your TV. I think we're just in the very, very beginning stages of developing storytelling, principles that travel across those things. So usually the examples you see now are kind of clunky and they're not great stories to begin with, and it's like choose your own adventure kind of things or whatever, and I find those a little disappointing, but still liberating and not restrictive, because they just, the potential is amazing.
When it comes back to what, if people get caught up on what the technology can do, and the focus, hey, it's a new shiny penny and I can tell it this way or that way, rather than what you said originally, you focus on the narrative first, right? It's about the creative, it's about the message first, and technology allows you to spread it around the world, to amplify it, it enables, but it doesn't change a great story or a bad story, it doesn't turn that into a good one. So
just to add, so I'm a news junkie, I'm a fan of The Guardian, also the New York Times, and I saw recently a really great example of a multimedia story. The Times did that piece on South China Seas, the Philippines, and they did that kind of multimedia where it was text and then you kind of scroll down and it changed into a video, and I thought that was really beautifully executed and one of the rare examples of a new storytelling paradigm flowing through a couple of different technologies, and the story is fascinating.
We've done a couple of those, and one of them we did for the NSA story, and what we've learned is, again, you'll all know about Snowfall, which was the first one the New York Times did, which was absolutely, we'll take an enormous piece of work and tip it into a really innovative format, but what we've learned is you've got to make your story to fit. You can't just start with an 8,000 word feature piece and pour it into a multimedia experience. You've got to make it fit. So an explanatory piece of journalism, something that's going to work with data and around data, works really, really well.
And I think it's really going to be increasingly important for news brands to try things like that, because it brings a new level of engagement with the audience, and I think that's what a new news brand needs to do to differentiate in a commodified news landscape.
Yeah.
I want to talk about, Shane, go ahead.
I just wanted to add to that, which is, when you talk about video, and Eddie, when you talk about the nuance of where we are today, we're going to become ecosystem marketers. I kid you not, it's not going to be that one platform, it's going to be multiples where multiple screens will talk to each other, and it won't be as dinky as it is today, and it won't be driven by sound, and there will be an authentic ecosystem, and as marketers it won't be running 30s or 60s or even video as we know it. So platform video today is somewhere between 6 seconds and 13 hours. Right. So we've seen that with House of Cards and Bloody Vine. So there's that to deal with. But when participation becomes exciting, and we see the entree of that right now, where people like Huffington Post Live allow people to participate on the story before the story actually comes on, and the conversation all comminates around video, that's where it becomes interesting. So unlike Choose Your Own Adventure, where you've done 100 paths to purchase, you're able to actually go out to allow people to participate in it, which is what people want. Because you know what, we're 7 days into the new year, and the big phenomenon at the moment is bloody selfie Olympics. So people just want to get part of a story, and if they're not going to be part of it, they're going to make it up themselves, which I think is interesting. So 3 new platforms.
I want to talk a little bit now about inspiration and the sources. Maybe Ben, we'll start with you. You are we know you're under 40 because Forbes told us, yes. But at a young age, you are, I think, a serial entrepreneur. Would you say that you seek out new sources of inspiration, or do they find you?
I'm far too lazy to seek out any sources of anything. I think, look, today with everyone is just sort of bombarded from all sides. I too am sort of addicted to my phone. sorry. Maybe I'll just hold this in an
I want
awkward
to hear
way.
you.
For me, I'm frankly just bombarded, and I find inspiration when I least expect it. It's always, flying back from my vacation yesterday, I found an article that I ended up spending 2 hours sort of cutting and pasting and sending around to everyone in the company. It was an article in the first round review of, it was the 30 best pieces of advice that entrepreneurs gave last year as they sort of went and curated this piece. And it was just unbelievable for me to see. It's sort of overwhelming, in fact, just sort of how many brilliant people and brilliant ideas there are. And I think, from where I sit, I'm just trying to sort of take it all in and be really open-minded. I know so little as far as, every 3 months, we totally reimagine what our business is supposed to be. And I think just being really flexible and being really open-minded and really transparent is the best way to sort of find inspiration.
Where was that article, by the way? Because I think the audience...
It was in a venture firm called First Round. They have a publication called First Round Review. It was in there. It was really a spectacular article.
Fantastic. Freddie, do you have an answer to that? Do you deliberately seek inspiration, or is it seeking you?
Well, I think inspiration is one of those things, at least from a creative standpoint, it just comes from living your life and trying to be as diverse as possible in your experiences, and just having drawing your inspiration from as many places and as diverse a range of places as possible. I was thinking a little bit though about the question about technology being restrictive, if you don't mind me going back to it for a second. Because I don't think technology is restrictive here in the creation of things. I think technology becomes restrictive on the consumer end, because we're hurtling towards this place where you can literally get whatever you want and that's it. And you can just get whatever you want instantly and fill your mind with that. If you wanted to, you could ignore all the NSA stuff. You spend your whole life, I don't want to think about it, I don't want to look at it. I can spend my 24 hours a day doing something else and just be focused on that. And there's so much glamour and glitz and all these gadgets out there now where it's as a consumer, the difficulty now becomes we can get whatever we want, so how does anything outside of what pleases us and what we want to see break through that? And I think that's going to be the challenge moving forward.
Shingy, you spend how many days on the road every single year?
Close to 300.
Just about 300.
Yeah.
So is it finding you inspiration, or?
Yeah, like a bloody Mack truck coming down a highway. But here's what's interesting, right? We are bombarded with, talk about bombardment, there's 1,900 media messages per day. So to Keith's point, bloody bang on, because 250 of those are ads. So the cut through is really interesting, and to Freddie's point, the way we do that is through the art of curation. And that's why we exist as brands. It's all about curation, because it filters out shit. And what people don't talk about is discovery. So discovery's gone from these platforms today. And I think it's really interesting that when you do discover these things, they end up being in smaller places, smaller pockets, and most people kind of keep it secret and say, I just want to, I come from a trusted source. Because by the time it becomes popular, then everybody's heard about it. Who hasn't heard about Michael Bay yesterday, poor bastard? But you think about it and think, it's amazing, right? So it's saturated. So I think you go
Shingy, quick, just to make sure everybody knows what happened, that it was really...
you didn't, so Michael Bay, poor bastard, he was a deer at the headline, his teleprompter didn't work, and he's kind of on stage with Samsung, the bride of the ball, and they're like, hey mate, what do you think about this curved TV? Can we ad-lib? And he's like, shit his pants and walked off. They're like, oh, I'm sorry. And he walked behind the TVs on the way out. I'm like, bless him. And by the way, if that was a publicity stunt for Samsung, bloody brilliant. However, I suspect it wasn't. So what's really interesting is you start with your small tribes, understand what they're up to, and sort of be inspired by those and go to the amplifiers further out and just see if it radiates. And that's kind of where I think it's interesting.
Anybody else on the subject of inspiration and deliberation? Or?
Well, about the curation thing, I literally had to stop using Twitter. Because I was so overwhelmed by, and I thought that I had done a good job curating my feed. I was getting so much information every day that if I would wait a few hours and then check, I would want to cry because of how many incredible things had happened and how many awesome people were doing such epic stuff that I felt terrible about myself. And so, the thing with curation, it's really, you have to sort of really moderate how much comes in, because at the end of the day, you can totally get overwhelmed by it.
Yeah. So it sort of leads to another part of that question, which is, do you all kind of wait till a technology is proven till you allow the muse in, or do you find yourself more likely to embrace at the early stage? And once you find a muse, two-part question, I guess. Once you find a muse, do you try to stay with her or him?
I'll go first. Yes, I love everything. I'm a digital prostitute. I also love the ability to say, you know what, I'll only stay at a party as long as it's a good party, and then I'm going to piss off. So if it looks
and thank you last night till staying to the end of ours.
That was awesome. So if it's contagious, if something becomes really contagious, that's awesome. But seek out things early that are part of innovation funnel. Are they becoming emerging? And as soon as they hit mainstream, I kind of let the hands off of it, because at that time, it becomes kind of underwhelming at that point.
Eddie, how do you react to that?
I guess this is maybe even a question to all of my panelists. Do you not think like that the adoption of technology is like, the popularity of a movie, very peer-driven? Like, isn't it like when you see it, like I see a kid at the Vice office in Brooklyn with a thing or on a site, then I'm kind of piqued. And it's not until the technology comes that close physically to me, in my body, in my life, that I start to consider it as an option. No?
I think pretty much everyone in the world actually is wondering what the kids in your office in Brooklyn are playing. That's actually a blog in itself. Yeah. That's a really cool question for us, because one of the things when they sent us over to America to do The Guardian as a digital spin-off in America was essentially you've got to innovate. You've got to be separate from the mothership and be liberated from the sort of print and the legacy and go and do everything differently. So, and it was only two and a half years ago. You had to start by saying, it was like being a startup. You had to start by saying everything we have done before, and we were one of the first people to have a newspaper website, we are not going to do anymore. So at that point, you can't wait for everything to be proven. You've got to try everything and then see what works. And the brilliant thing about digital publishing on a minute-by-minute basis, although it is, and I'm very sorry, overwhelming for you, but you're still not 40. Come on.
I agree with that. I think
you can find out really quickly what's working and what isn't, and then move on.
Yeah, you have to be actively curious, all right, about looking for new technologies, figuring out what your consumers are into as a marketer, as Keith said, and try new things, and fail fast if you don't like it. I look for things that make my life easier. The curation is a big thing. You get inundated with things that can filter based on what you want, what you like, make tasks easier. Things. I mean, technology in the web is a very fascinating thing. Just if you can just make things easier for you, work, personal, way to connect, way to stay informed, stay in touch. Those things I think will win in the end.
Well, I think that's a great way to close out, and that was a lot of generosity and great thought, I think, for just 35 minutes. So Tim and Eddie and Freddie and Janine and Fred and Ben Shingy, thank you so much for being with us. And I'm going to bring back Michael Casson.
Whoa. Almost lands.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wenda. Thank you to all the folks who spent some time with us. That was very, very interesting and very enlightening. And Ben, you are still under 40, no matter what. Today, we've talked with leaders from across disciplines on how technology inspires them. Our last conversation of this session is with a man who embodies inspiration. Russell Simmons is an artist, a marketer, a technologist, a producer, an entrepreneur, an activist, a cultural touchstone, and a yogi. A man who has had direct impact on the lives, personal and professional, of everyone in this room and countless others. Of his creative and business success, Simmons has said, "I think I'm less afraid of failure than some others." Of his strategy, he has said, "Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you." And his philosophy, he has said, "Service is the key to everything in life." USA Today named Russell Simmons one of the 25 most influential people in the last 25 years. I'd like to welcome my friend, Russell Simmons.
That's a lot. Fuck. So, that was great.
just a little bit I heard, every single person on the stage was smarter than me, and I have the whole stage to myself. It's pretty fucking cool. All right.
So we don't have a teleprompter, Russell. You okay with that?
Oh, shit. I think it's okay.
So, Russell, technology, what inspires you the most?
Well, shit just happens so fast, right? It's fun because, like, not only can you learn things quickly, but, and I disagree, but I agree. It's restrictive to some, and it's so broad and there's so much to others. Like what he said about Twitter. One person says, because you can get whatever you want, then you're not, like watching, like a lot of people, like adults, we want to watch Revolt already, right? Because like, oh shit, I didn't know that was out. Oh, that's interesting. Or, you're not just playing what you want, you're seeing whatever, they're programming, which is an old school thing, right? But then it comes into your life and you learn it. And so I agree. And then a minute later he says, fucking Twitter, like you check, and it's, oh man, all this shit happened in the last 3 minutes while I was, so it's a little of both. But look how long we spent branding a record, how many singles we put out and videos we spent money on, and how much energy, just to so that on a certain date you might line up and buy some shit that you already own all the singles from. And then someone puts out a record and says, scramble for it, buy it all now, figure out what you want later. And it shows you that's how quick, things have, and you have to be, constantly, I'm a content guy. I have a digital solutions company, but the genius behind the company is, I invested in her and I work for her and I do what she says mostly. But just this idea, digital things, I'm a content guy. I just gotta put my shit where content belongs. And that's how I become a digital guy. I couldn't help it. So I'm not so I want to say that because that's kind of preface whatever stupid shit I might say. Because I'm a content guy and I have 3 digital companies because I have no choice.
So Russell, as you look at the world through a creative set of eyes, and obviously, as I said, you've touched so many different aspects. You began with music, but you went into fashion and everything else that you've done. Has technology changed the way you create? I mean, do you?
Yeah,
and I don't mean just on the keyboard, so to speak, but has it changed the way you create from the thought process?
Well, it shows you sometimes, you don't know any better. You think you know something. I mean, I would always say to these people who said, oh, I can do that. That's nothing. I'm a jazz musician. I can play R&B. Fuck R&B. Or I'm an R&B musician. That didn't even know music in that rap music. People always say stuff like that, right? And I used to think that there's a genius in commercial creativity because you walk the street, you smell all this shit, right? And then you spit out your version of it. And it doesn't sound like, it doesn't remind you of as much, it doesn't borrow from as much of all the commercial stuff that's out. But the minute you put it out, the phones light up on the radio and everybody goes crazy and everybody smells it. So that's your filter, of all the things that you smell. So you smell pop culture if you're a pop guy, right? And you do something original and new. And that was the process. And you still have that. But it's restrictive in the sense that, things get, shot down so quickly. And you kind of, maybe because you're old, maybe I'm old, so I feel less, so I feel sometimes they'll tell you so quickly, that you're on the wrong path. You have to have courage, I guess, to continue.
So let's talk about...
Right, to go against the crowd, and they all say, no, fuck you, it sucks, and you say, I'm gonna, you can't shove it down their throat, but you can, you learn something.
So, Russell, as we look at how talent is discovered today and how, when you began in the business, how the gatekeepers have changed. Let's talk about that for a second. When you began in the business, there were gatekeepers. We didn't have the internet in the same way that we do today to allow for what was the promise of democratization, if you will, in terms of the ability to put your content out there and have it seen and heard without going through gatekeepers. How is that, from your perspective as an artist? That was a gigantic change in terms of how you source talent and how you put your own content out there.
Yeah, the gatekeepers have always been like, we always gatekeepers. Always, that was our job, you know, to disrupt or to create something that was innovative. Like I said, a song that may not sound pop or accessible, but it becomes this thing. So, you know, we never really. This is a way to go around the gatekeepers so much easier for the most part, right? So that's really, you know, a new. I shouldn't say innovation; it's been overused already, probably this morning. But it's a thing that is really an important part of our process, to know that we can be original. I just said the opposite thing, but I can say it again, and that, you know, no one can stop us. That's a really great thing, that my daughter can create something that's, you know, better than, you know, whoever, you know, whatever, and just from the home. And so that's a...
And she can circulate it, and she can distribute it.
Of course, and that's, as we know, that's why we're here.
So
as content people, that's why we're here.
Well, and that was my
humbling
next question.
to gatekeepers, because I'm also, as much as I'm an artist, you know, I'm gotten old, I'm a gatekeeper. And All Def Digital, we don't, you know, I was in a room yesterday with my head of content and the whole staff, and I'm talking to ADD about a show that I liked and that they didn't like. So fuck you, I'm going to put it up anyway. And they're looking at me like, you're going to see tomorrow, you know, the afternoon. So gatekeepers, you know, powerless, at the same time, you know.
So you launched All Def Music and All Def Narrative, and as part of...
No, narrative is this hat does not mean Nick. People think Snoop's thought. It means narrative, the N word up here. So narrative is the new company, and it's a digital solutions company. All Def Digital was meant, because I go to Hollywood. Hollywood still, there is a gatekeeper. There is a weird group in this room, you know. This is the Hollywood and digital in general. You know, they're a lot less integrated than Jerry Springer. You know. And because of that, the diversity, the money in diversity is being overlooked. So, I mean, when Martin and Jamie and Cedric and Bernie and Chris Tucker and Steve Harvey and even Kevin Hart and J.B. Smoove and all these guys got to Tracy Morgan and whoever the fuck, Dave Chappelle, all came at one moment. And Hollywood was standing by the stage, and they were taking these stars, with the exception of the two I mentioned that are hot today, like in 8 trailers at one time, you can see Kevin Hart. Like you say black comedy with a black guy, and everybody in the room in Hollywood says Kevin Hart, like he's the only black person in the world. You know, they're not standing by the stage. So I have a show, I make white people watch black comedians Wednesday nights at the Chinese theater. It's sold out every Wednesday, but call ahead. But so there's no integration. And that lack of integration, you know, makes the gatekeepers even more corny, and they lose a lot. So that's why All Def Digital, you know, because there's a way to give exposure to, and that's what I want to do now that I'm in Hollywood. A lot of what's on All Def Digital will be movie, will be television, will be expounded on, you know, because most people sitting in a space like I'm sitting don't know other forms of media and don't really have access to or have any experience branding or broadening brands. And so that's why All Def Digital was born. And then All Def Music, I couldn't have an All Def anything without talking to Lucian. And so I made All Def Music. And then Steve Rifkin runs that. And so All Def Music is a part of All Def Digital. And it's...
And in both cases, Russell, I think you brought in some partners. I think you've got some partners.
Brian Robbins is the smart guy on the block who's saved us a lot of time and energy. He has awesomeness. And Brian is a guy, he made his first, he's kind of friendly in all the spaces that we belong. He understands youth culture, right? He understands hip hop. His first movie he made for me when he was a kid about hip hop, called The Show, as a director. And he, you know, the only guy who's really showed us, you know, he's the only one who sold his company, isn't he? Sold it prematurely, if you ask me.
But I was an investor. I wasn't unhappy.
It's all right. I mean, 8 months, probably $100 and some million you'd make. It's good. 18 months, who in the fuck knows what you might have made? So,
my wife said the same thing to me, Russell.
Well, maybe. So he did what he did. I know we're tracking like him, so we're pretty excited. He's given us lots of perspective and, you know, and a backbone that we need from awesomeness for All Def Digital. So I have Brian Robbins on the one side and have Steve Rifkin on the other as partners. And the idea of All Def Digital, I mean, couldn't do it without doing poetry. As you know, we did all this. So we found a space, and there's a lot of poetry. There's music, and there's comedy. And so we're producing shows and
So
the obvious stuff.
So talking about poetry, Russell, you are a storyteller. I mean, you're a content guy. You're a storyteller.
Yeah, I think so.
How has technology changed the way you tell a story? Or has it?
Well, there's a lot of things about tech. I mean, look, All Def Music, right? We could make a video that looks like, when I left the record business, if I made a little smart budget video that looked like the smart budget video that we made for this guy, Jarrell Perry, it would be $150,000, but we spent $2,200. So, we're able to put out a bunch of content and look at it and smell it, and people can judge it quickly and give it a good look. So that's helped. And then there's everything else. This idea that it's a playground where there's so many people communicating with so many people, and there's so many perspectives, and this idea of integration that Hollywood doesn't seek out but lives with. It's the next America. Post-racial America may not exist in your lives, but it's aspirational to many in America. So when you start to integrate content, I don't do a black play. Like the fact that and if you sit and you think about Hollywood and you say, oh, there's this great black explosion of film. I've seen that 18 times. I'm 100. I've seen it. I remember when Shaft and everything was hot, and then they had to, when we made Crush Groove, there was a bunch of black movies, and then there was, always Stormy Weather. I guess there was Cabin in the Sky and a bunch of movies. There's a moment where you make a bunch of black movies, but that doesn't have anything to do with the next America. There's no Scandal without Kerry Washington. And she's the first black lead in a show with that kind of, since integrated show since, Diane Carroll, Julia. You realize that? Since fucking Julia. People weren't even born when Julia was a show. And there's so much more in diversity, and that's what I think. That's what I hope that I moved to LA to do, to be part of that new process, because there's so much money in it, integration, that I want to, and I'm not doing it for the money, I'm saying, but I just want to see America better, and Hollywood and digital, where you have all these progressive, compassionate, forward-thinking people, would be part of making the country better. We wouldn't be stifling it. We wouldn't be behind Jerry Springer. We wouldn't be slow on integration. We'd be seeking it out because it's part of our business model, should be part of our business model.
So Russell, as you talk about the way you've changed storytelling, and we talked about the democratization.
Did you notice that there's not one black person in this room? Except where you at? Oh, I see you. And the girl used to work for Motorola. And there's a guy working back in it. Sweeping the floor, Nick? No, you're working in the sound. That's good. This is not by design. You guys are not intentionally shutting people out, but you're in a world that you need diversity because you want to broaden your horizon. The next America is waiting on you, and you need to, make it better, be part of making a next America or a post-racial America, whatever you want to call it, and your content should reflect that. And just because you say you're trying to do it doesn't mean it's really happening, because this integration of culture is explosive and interesting, and it's American. It's important. So it's money, that's the last thing.
Well, but listen, and it's a valid point, Russell. But as we talk about, as we talk about the content and the storytelling and who gets to tell the stories, the guys from BuzzFeed had a funny comment, which was content was king, distribution is queen, but she wears the pants. How do you look at that in terms of, again, content being at the core, but the distribution of it really, winning the day?
Well, a breakout, you could throw a breakout record, out the window, and it would be a hit no matter what you did to it. That was true even before digital. I remember when Albie Shaw put out a record and it had leaked to the Philadelphia radio station, and 2 hours later, he was playing and all the people backstage were talking about how hot the record was in New York. Like how long did it take to drive? Because you had to drive the record back from Philadelphia to play it. And that was 2 hours, you know, or less than 2. I don't know how they got the record, right? That was how records and how music spreads. Good ideas spread, but you have to be awesome. You just can't be great. You got to be beyond great. So distribution is really, really important, and the gatekeepers, you know, still exist at that level. You know, people who can make choices how to integrate, you know, what this integration is, you know, and why it's so necessary. I mean, you just can't keep counting Fast and Furious money to pay for the studio. There's other shit to do. There's more stuff.
So Russell, as a manager,
You get that reference? I mean, Fast and Furious? It's obvious, I'm sorry.
as a manager and as an entrepreneur, how do you use technology to operate your businesses? I mean, how do you use social media in terms of outward messaging, and how do you use technology internally to operate your businesses?
Well, there's a lot of smart tech people working for me. Obviously, we manage all of our information and pass all of our information, and you know, and I tweet. I got 3 million followers. I send out mostly prayer and then a blog about, you know, the mayor, or about animal rights, or about whatever, whatever I want. But so I use social media to help build Global Grind. I use social media, obviously, as part of our digital solutions company to do branding for lots of brands. And All Def Digital, you know, is going to rely on, and it's growing very, very quickly. And it's social media. That's a big part of its push. You know, it's really like at the fingertips. Like you could do something really quick, and the next thing you know, your internet company is famous. You know, I mean, you know, within an hour, you know, you do something really silly, and like I'd be trending #1 on Yahoo. You know, I was trending #1 on Yahoo recently for some dumb shit I did. I pulled it within hours. Hours. Dave Chappelle could have probably done it. I couldn't do it. I got in trouble. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? I don't even want to mention it. I'd be in the press tomorrow again. So you have to be, you know, things happen very quickly, and you have to be in charge and pay attention. And you have lots of people working for you, doing lots of stuff on social media. Some of the stuff may not be in your name, but it's related to your name. And it's one of those 3 companies, it's one of those 100 employees, and they press a button, and this shit just goes out. And the next thing you know, it's like, you know, you're getting a call. I was on stage speaking at the foundation. I'm the chairman of the Foundation for Ethnic Understanding, and we're discussing tolerance, you know, in race and religion. And I got a call, and my publicist says, "You are in trouble. You are in trouble. Get off the stage." I got off the stage, and he's like, "Yo, Russ, you fuck," you know. So quickly, it happens very quickly, as you all know. It can happen.
Well, Russell, we talk about, you know, in the early days of the internet, when brands were coming and trying to get into that IPO swing, and they used to come in and say, "We need to build a brand in 30 days." And, you know, we used to laugh and put it into the file cabinet under "build a brand in 30 days." We've moved off of that, but we're in a world today where you can build a brand quicker than you ever could. But as you were just saying, you could destroy a brand in 1 sentence.
In 1 sentence.
In 1 sentence. How do you manage that as an artist? How do you manage that as a...
You know, I mean, first of all, if you have a mantra that's meaningful and useful and positive and inspired, and it's meant not to hurt but to uplift, you know, then mostly you won't fuck up. But if you got one that's, you know, based on low-ended stuff, and, you know, you just want to figure out what's the bottom and how deep can you go and how much low-end shit can you do, and don't get in trouble. You know, if you're doing that, then you're always at risk, right? So I try to, you know, be a little bit more, give people things that I think they need that'll make them happy or laugh, or poetry that inspires, or even, you know, stuff that just doesn't put you at risk. So you have a whole mantra at a whole company full of stuff that's not meant to hurt. But, you know, it doesn't mean I would stop artists, or, you know, I sign artists who I think have edge and personality that, you know, and we piss people off. My very presence, you know, pisses people off, you know, but, you know, as stuff I believe in, it's okay, you know, gay rights activist, an animal rights activist, I'm an occupier. I was one of the people slept in that park all the time. I'm a lot of stuff, and a lot of people are pissed all the time, so.
Well, Russell, what you are mostly is inspirational, and I appreciate, and I hope everyone else appreciates that inspiration and that wit and the creativity and the great talent and the great success.
That's a blowjob. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was nice.